Hello and welcome to the channel. Now in this video I'm going to talk about some of the changes I've made to my XRAY T4F over the last winter of indoor racing on carpet. I was planning to make this video a little while ago, but as most of us know, there's no racing at the moment, so not so much incentive to take this apart. So this is the first X-Ray that I've owned, and overall I've been very pleased with it. The quality is very good and it's very robust, but there is a couple of things to watch out for with the T4F'19 version, and the main one is this front drive pulley here on the lay shaft. There's a problem in the manuals where they didn't include the correct spacers, and that means that if you were to follow the manual precisely, your belt falls off and all sorts of bad things happen. Now fortunately they did update the kits with the missing parts added, but still the manual's not very clear, so make sure you look out for one of the resources that does have the correct instructions in it to make sure you build it properly and get the sequence right, otherwise you'll have a lot of problems. A second issue related to the drivetrain is the diff position, and I found that the manual is not very clear about how the diff should be put in. Some places it says you need to have the diff low, some places it says you need to have the diff high. Now when I first built the car, I built the diff high. That was a mistake. Within a few races, lots and lots of noise coming from the front end under braking, and a few races after that, the belt was stripped and the pulley was stripped. Another thing to watch out for in general, and this is probably common to most front wheel drive cars, is because the motor's out the front here, there's not very much bumper, and if you hit something hard, what I found with this car is the bumper, you can see a chip there, is actually hitting the motor, pushing the motor back. Now with the standard screws, which are just button head screws, the motor slid back several times and I went through a number of spur gears in the first few weeks of owning it. Fix for me, which has been perfect ever since, is to fit some of these countersunk washers. X-Ray sell them, as do many others, and some countersunk screws. Gives you a much bigger surface area, holds the motor in much more securely, and the spur gear hasn't had a problem ever since then. The final change I've made, which is really just for my car, is to fit this alternative servo mount. This is made by a company called RC Maker, and the reason I've got this is because it's a little bit narrower, so it goes directly over the shorty servo, and that means that my receiver, which is a fairly old Futaba receiver and quite large by some standards, can actually fit in neatly behind the servo. Gives me lots of clearance there for the wiring. A general overview of the electrics in this car: I'm using a Hobbywing stock spec speed controller, a Surpass V5 17.5 motor, and this is a full height IP shorty. And even though this is a relatively heavy shorty compared to what some people are using, the car is still quite underweight. We were running at 1200 grams. As you can see, even with the alloy chassis, I've got 25 grams of weight here just to bring it up to the minimum. The main racing I've been doing this winter is at the Chippenham Winter Indoor Championship, which is a popular series in the southwest of England. The track itself is quite large. For indoor standards certainly, it's about 30 metres by 20 metres, and it's on ETS carpet, but it is a temporary track, so the grip doesn't get super high like some tracks might do. I've made a couple of changes that have worked for me on these track conditions. The main one has been the front springs. I've gone right up to X-Ray's 3.0 spring. The car just seems a lot better with the heaviest front spring, bearing in mind the car's got a lot of weight over the front end, and I run the 2.7 rear springs, which just seems to give a good balance for me. Ride height and droop are very standard. The diff has got 500k oil in it, which is maybe slightly different to the kit 300k, not something I could really notice. The biggest expenditure probably has been the X-Ray alloy chassis, which is a very nice piece of work. It makes the car quite a lot stiffer. With the graphite chassis, it really is very flexy. With this car, to my feel, it has just a nice amount of flex, and it certainly feels a lot more stable and confident on the track because of that. In terms of tyres, everyone was running on these Ride pre-mounted treaded tyres, which again seem like a very good tyre indoors, not too expensive, and they last a long time. They do tend to swell a bit after you've applied additive to them, but doesn't have an effect on the performance. And in terms of body, I've just been running the Bitty Design Civic. It's a very stable body shell. The reputation is that it's more of a stability shell rather than a steering shell. I've just always used it throughout the season, and it's worked very well for me. So that's an overview of the T4F'19 version. Now, the next thing on my agenda is to build up the T4F'19 version, and when we're allowed back on the tracks, I will be comparing them both to see which one, if either, has the advantage. But if you've got any questions or comments, please do add them underneath the video. If not, thank you for watching.